So it's not news that the tech space is one area that many people are interested in. I mean, I've seen people change fields from places like chemistry. I've also seen people who have a forte trying it out. And that's because there's actually opportunity for workers in the tech space, and it is also one of the predominant remote work areas. So you get a perks of remote work too. So usually people will come to me and they'll be like, look, I see what you do, I like it, how do I get started? So for such people, this video is for you. The word coding is a very broad term, so let me be more specific. When I say coding, I mean software development. What does software development involve? Glad you asked. Software development has to do with building software, simple. So you're building mobile apps, web apps, desktop apps, you name it. And here's how it works. In software development, there are two parts. There's the front end and then there's the back end. The front end developers deal with the visuals, the part that the user interacts with. So the screens, the list, the buttons, the animations, things like that. But the back-end developer deals with the server-side stuff, like the database in the cloud. Here's an example. Let's take WhatsApp for instance. When you open the WhatsApp app, you can see your list of chats, you can click around, you can scroll around. That is the front-end side. But then before your messages appear on your phone, they had to be loaded from some database in the cloud. And it is the job of the back-end developer to structure that database so that everything works properly. So whether you're front-end or back-end, at the end of the day, you have to write some code to implement what you want, right? But the question is, how does the code turn into the app? I used to ask myself that same question. It turns out there are tools that we can use. Just like how a carpenter has a toolbox that enables them to build stuff, there are some tools that we use to build the software. Now, these tools have many names. People call them frameworks. There's also SDK, that is Software Development Kit. And there are also some that are called libraries. But even though there are slight differences between them, at the end of the day, they are tools. So you can see it as that. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using the term framework. So whenever I hear framework, I'm referring to the tools that we use to build the software. So the software development tools are written in some programming language. So in order to use them, you have to learn that language. Now you realize that I haven't mentioned learning programming language until now. That is because you first have to know the frameworks that you want to use so that you can learn the languages for those frameworks. I mean, I've seen some people who want to do coding and they first start by learning all the languages in the world, C++, Python. You end up learning some stuff that you never use. So you first have to know the framework, then you learn the language for that framework. I'll be talking about that later. All right, so quick recap. Software development has to do with building software. There are two parts to it, front end, back end. In order to build a software, you need some tools, and those tools are written in some programming language, so you need to know the programming language to use those tools. Now, we can get started on the steps on how to become a software developer. But first, prerequisites. You're going to need a laptop, you're going to need some internet connection, and then you're going to need time. If you've got those, we can dive in. Step 1, learn how to type fast. Now, this might not seem obvious, but if you're going to take this seriously, you might as well get comfortable typing on the keyboard because you're going to do a lot of that. So you can get Mavis Beacon or any software that you want and get it done. Step 2, have a fundamental understanding on how computers execute code. Now, this might not be that necessary and you don't have to go too deep in the details, but at least it's going to give you an appreciation on what happens to your code when you run them. I'm planning on making a simple explainer video on this, so if you're interested, let me know in the comment section. Step 3, choose your destiny. Now, you have to decide whether you're going to go front end or back end. And whichever one you choose, you have to look into the frameworks that you can use. And there are many frameworks. For front end, for instance, there is Flutter, there is React, there's Vue, there's Angular, there's even Electron. So take your time, do the research, and look into the ones that will be useful for you. Even with my advice for front end, because that's what I do, I'd say if you want to do websites, you can look into React, but for anything else, Flutter is the name of the game. Step 4, just do it. Now that you know the framework that you want to use, you just have to take your time, get tutorials, create a schedule, and follow those tutorials. Usually the tutorials for the framework will begin with the programming language, but in some cases they're not going to teach you the programming language, so you have to get a separate video on that programming language to follow that tutorial. Now, let me give you some tips on how you can go about the tutorials. So basically there are two sources of tutorials. You can go the paid platform like Udemy and the rest, or you can go YouTube University. Basically means learning from YouTube videos. If you're going the paid platform, and even that one sometimes it's free, for that one they are going to give you a course to follow, so it is simple and straightforward. But if you're going YouTube, then you kind of have to create your own course, and that's where my tips are going to come in handy. So what you can do is you can divide your learning process into, call them seasons, so beginner season, intermediate season, and so forth. Then at the end of each season, you have to implement a project that makes use of the stuff you learned. So let me give an example with YouTube. If I was now learning how to use Flutter, for instance. For the beginner season, I'll first start by looking for one of those 12 hours crash course videos. I'm going to get 2 of those, go through it religiously, and then finish with a project. But then you realize that by the time you're done with this, you would have been introduced to some advanced topics that were not covered, or there could be some areas that you didn't fully understand. Now you have to take note of those, because in the next season for me, I'll be now looking for targeted videos for those topics. Crash those as well, and it goes on. That's how it works. Before I realize you're working on real world projects. It's exciting. Now, the truth is, I've seen many people's life change when they took this seriously. But I've also seen some people who are still struggling to get a job after they made a move. Thing is, tech is a space of endless possibilities, but that also means many people are trying to get into it. So, what's going to set you apart from the rest? I'll tell you in this video right here. Check it out. Until then, choo!